Economy on the lethal yellowing disease national response. A special acknowledgement to the Honorable Minister for Agriculture, Roye, as well as Honorable Julian Defo, who has joined us, other senior members of the Ministry of Agriculture, members of the media, those of you tuned in via various media, good morning and welcome. Last week, the Ministry of Agriculture confirmed the presence of lethal yellowing disease in the northeast of Dominica. And since then, the ministry has taken decisive action to arrest this issue, to manage it. And today, key officials within the Ministry of Agriculture, including the minister, will outline the threat and provide details on the mitigation methods underway, the mitigation efforts that are underway. So to start us off this morning, I would like to invite Mrs. Linessa Ferrara. She is head. Somebody said something? Okay. She's head of the Plant Protection and Quarantine Services, and she will provide us with a technical briefing. Please welcome Mrs. Ferrara.
Good morning, all. Good morning. First, I'd like to acknowledge those present at the head table and in the audience. Honorable Roland Roye, the Minister responsible for the Ministry of Agriculture, Fisheries, Blue and Green Economy. The Honorable Mr. Defo, responsible for the Ministry of Fisheries, under the same Ministry of Agriculture, Blue and Green Economy. I'd like to acknowledge the Permanent Secretary in our midst, under the very same Ministry of Agriculture, Fisheries, Blue and Green Economy. I'd like to acknowledge the Director of Agriculture, the Press Secretary, Mrs. Dion Duran Smith, everyone present here, the media, welcome. Good morning. So, my name is Linessa Ferrara, and I'm a representative of the Plant Protection and Quarantine Department. As the designated authority for plant health in Dominica, the Plant Protection and Quarantine Unit is responsible for safeguarding the country against pests of economic importance. This power is vested in the Plant Protection and Quarantine Act, Act number 10 of 1986, Chapter 5840. The confirmation of lethal yellowing disease represents a serious phytosanitary threat to Dominica's coconut industry, and it requires immediate, coordinated national action. Plant health is just not a national issue. It is also a regional and international obligation. So under the international framework, such as the International Plant Protection Convention, which is the IPPC, Dominica is required to report plant pests of economic importance. Our response to this disease is therefore aligned to both national legislation and regional obligations. In this regard, all actions being undertaken are guided by the Act. Under the Act, the Plant Protection and Quarantine Act, the government has clear legal authority to respond to the situation. Section 8 gives the minister the power to implement all necessary measures to prevent the spread of pests. This includes quarantine pests, and it includes quarantine areas with this pest, restricting movement of plant material, and ordering the destruction of infected plants. In addition, Section 25 and 26 empower the Plant Protection and Quarantine Department to carry out inspections, take necessary action, including the removal and destruction of infected and suspected planting material. So the legal provisions allow us to act quickly, decisively, and in the best interests of protecting Dominica's agriculture. Now that this is stated, I'd like to go ahead and give you some information on the disease. So just what is lethal yellowing disease? It is a very destructive disease, as its name itself implies. It's lethal, and it affects palms, up to over 30 species of palms, including coconuts. It is caused by a microscopic organism called the phytoplasma, and it affects the internal system of the plant. It thereby causes complete death of the plant. So once the plant becomes infected, it will decline very quickly once it starts showing symptoms and die. Usually between 3 to 6 months of showing the initial symptoms. So what to look for? What will you see? First, you will see premature drops of the coconut. Whatever stage they are on the tree, be it young or old, you'll find they fall, resulting in a blackening of the area around the head, the calyx area. You would see blackening of the flowers or inflorescence. So the plant cannot produce new fruit. The flowers die. You would get yellowing of the leaves starting from the oldest leaves, and it gradually yellows the leaves to middle and youngest, resulting at last in the death of the youngest spear leaf. Lastly, you would have the breaking off of the crown, and then the tree becomes a telephone post. So all of that happens quickly within a 3 to 6 months period, as mentioned before. Now, what we want is that we do not want persons to mix up the disease, lethal yellow disease, with another disease we have on island called borderrot, which causes death of the plant too, but it's different. That borderrot disease is not a phytoplasma, it's a fungus, and it causes the death of the spear leaf initially. That's its first symptom. And then you may still see the leaves around that spear leaf turgid and upright, as well as the coconut still on the tree. So it's a different disease. The lethal yellowing disease is spread in 2 ways. It is spread by a affected planting material, but also it can be spread by this leaf hopper. This leaf hopper is called a Haplaxia scrotus. It's very small, just about 3 to 5 millimeters in size. Then, as I mentioned before, the disease is also spread through the movement of infected planting material. So if you move coconut seedlings, you can also move other parts of the plants which can harbor the pest. So that's why we ask that there be strict movement control. It's necessary that there be strict movement of control of planting material. So currently, the disease has been confirmed in Woodford Hill. We have seen symptomatic trees from Palm Tree all the way to Hodges and as far up as above the Woodford Hill Primary School. So this is what we call the epicenter of the disease, or the red zone. It represents the infection core. Around that, we have another zone which we call the orange zone that extends to about 5 kilometers, where the disease is not yet seen visually. But as a ministry, we'll be conducting surveillance activities in that area to ensure that if any symptomatic trees arise, they will be destroyed. So for now, the disease is localized more or less within the Woodford Hill area, from, as I said, from Palm Tree to Hodges. So what is the ministry's response? The ministry has activated a series of coordinated eradication and containment measures. So within the red zone, as I mentioned, from Palm Tree to Hodges, we are undertaking systemic eradication. So that involves identifying of diseased trees, and even trees that may not yet be showing symptoms. We are cutting, bucking, piling, and then destroying these trees, either through burning or burial. As well as, in conjunction with that, we are conducting vector control, vector management. So we are spraying insecticides on the cut foliage of these palms, as well as the surrounding grasses around these palms. Because one thing I forgot to mention, the leaf hopper, a part of its life cycle is found within grasses, within the root zone of grasses, such as the St. Augustine grass, Bermuda grass, guinea grass. So it requires a multi-pronged approach to control vector and disease. So in the upcoming days, the public will be seeing us a lot more. They'll be seeing us on the field, conducting our eradication activities, issuing notices to farmers, and doing surveillance activities. We would like 3 things to be remembered, if nothing else is remembered from my speech this morning. Please, if you see any suspected symptoms out of the red zone, Woodford Hill area, report it to us at the Ministry of Agriculture. Do not move any coconut planting material, nuts, soil, grass, or any palm parts, debris from the red zone, that infected area, because you can risk moving disease or vector. Cooperate fully with the team on the ground. You are going ahead and issuing the notices and destroying the trees, because we recognize that we are just trying to not allow that disease to spread island-wide, which can cause complete eradication of coconuts in Dominica. So cooperate with the team as we will go ahead with our operation. These simple actions can make a big difference in containment and spread. So let me emphasize that early detection and rapid response are our strongest tools. The window for successful eradication is limited, and with coordinated action and public support, it remains achievable. So the Plant Protection and Quarantine Unit will continue to lead surveillance, will continue to lead enforcement, and provide technical support throughout this response. We'll continue to work closely with national, regional, and international partners to ensure that our actions are effective and aligned with best practices. So in closing, this is a serious but manageable plant health emergency. We will act decisively, we will act scientifically, and with your cooperation, we will protect Dominica's coconut industry. Thank you.
All right, we thank Mrs. Linessa Ferrara for providing us with a very clear definition of lethal yellowing disease, how it's spread, and importantly, the efforts that are already underway to manage that spread. As well, of course, you heard towards the end the call for public cooperation in addressing this threat. As you heard also from Mrs. Ferrara, the mitigation efforts are in fact underway, starting with surveillance conducted. And to tell us more about that, we have Mr. Kian Stevenson. He is the Acting Director of Agriculture, and he will now address us.
Good morning. I'd like to acknowledge Honorable Minister Roland Royer, Minister of Agriculture, Fisheries, Blue and Green Economy, Honorable Defoe, the Ministry of Fisheries, P.S. Anslem, ICA representative, Mr. Cyril, Dexia in our midst, our press secretary, Dion Dura, our technical officer of projects and services, Talifer, technical officer of policy, Dr. Kazimi, the media, and the general public. Thank you for being here and listening to this important press conference this morning. The Ministry of Agriculture, Fisheries and Blue and Green Economy continues to actively implement a coordinated operational response to the outbreak of lethal yellowing disease in the Woodford Hill area. As outlined, we have the red zone from Palm Tree to Hodges, and our surveillance zone, or the orange zone, from the Pegua Bay, Marigot to Thibault in the north. I will provide an update on the progress of our field operations, including tree removal and disposal, control burning activities, interagency coordination, and the timelines for the next phase of work. Following the confirmation of the disease, as mentioned, the ministry moved swiftly to activate eradication and containment measures within the designated red zone, which represents the core area of infection. The affected area extends, as I mentioned, and I will repeat again because it's important, from the Palm Tree area, Wesley Palm Tree area, to the Hodges Bridge, Kalibishi, which contains that within the Woodford Hill area. Included inland section, as mentioned before, up to or just beyond 100 feet beyond the primary school of the Woodford Hill Primary School. Within this area, the controlled burning of the infected material is necessary is a necessary phytosanitary measure to reduce the spread of the disease and to prevent further impact on the coconut industry. Our primary objective at this stage is to remove all infected and high-risk coconut palms and other palm species in order to eliminate the sources of infection and reduce the likelihood of further spread. To date, the dedicated field teams have been deployed to carry out systematic identification, cutting, bucking, burning and removal of plants. To date, we have started within the week, and to date we have already removed over 700 coconut trees within the area. As part of the operation to contain this, we're starting on the outskirts of the red zone and moving into the epicenter for proper containment. These operations are being conducted in accordance with established phytosanitary protocols with a strong emphasis on safety, efficiency, and environmental responsibility. Palm trees within this red zone, as mentioned, are cut, bucked on site, heaped, treated to control any leaf hopper, and eventually burnt or buried. A critical component of this response is the safe disposal of infected material through controlled burning. This is a necessary phytosanitary measure as it ensures the complete destruction of the infected plant tissue and prevents the disease from persisting or spreading through residual material. Controlled burning activities are being conducted in a structured and monitored manner with due consideration given to public safety and the environmental consideration or conditions. These operations are not being carried out in isolation. The ministry is working closely with several key agencies to ensure that all activities are executed safely and effectively. In this stance, we'd like to acknowledge the Ministry of National Security through the Fire and Ambulance Services Division, which plays an important role in providing guidance on fire safety and supporting controlled burning operations where required. Their involvement helps to ensure that all burning activities are conducted in a controlled and a secure manner. We are also coordinating with the Commonwealth of Dominica's police force, particularly in relation to site security, traffic management, and enforcement of movement of restrictions within the affected areas. This is critical in maintaining the integrity of the contaminated zone and preventing unauthorized movements of plant material. In addition, local government authorities, village councils are actively engaged in the community level coordination. Their role is essential in supporting the public awareness, facilitating access to affected areas, and ensuring that residents are informed, cooperative throughout the process. Thus far, we have carried out 3 community-based meetings. Just last night, we were within the Woodford Hill community at the primary school. We have community blasts through local blast agents. We have carried out church notices at the churches and posters throughout the community, along with personal visits to persons in the affected area by our extension staff. We can't forget the help and the collaboration with the forestry, the National Employment Program, NEP, along with the concerned and able villagers. They have all played a critical part on the ground. Presently, we have about 5 teams with groups of 6, so about 30 persons on the ground carrying out the control, cutback, and eradication as mentioned before, as comprising of what I just mentioned, Ministry of Agriculture, Forestry, and NEP, along with concerned and able villagers. With that, we'd like to thank the Ministry of Environment as well, Rural Modernization, Kalinago Upliftment, and Constituency Empowerment for their support. This multi-agency approach reflects the seriousness of the situation and the need for a unified and national response. Looking ahead, the ministry has established a clear operational timeline for the next 3 to 4 months, which represents a critical window for intervention. During this period, our focus will remain, as mentioned before, in accelerating the removal and the destruction of all palms within the red zone, which is comprised of about a 700-acre parameter and space. Yes? Intensifying surveillance within the surrounding buffer areas and nationally, strengthening our vector management and field sanitation measures, maintaining strict control of the movement of coconuts and palm materials within this area. These actions are designed to contain the disease within the affected area and the quarantine zone and prevent its spread throughout the island. It is important to emphasize that time is a critical factor. Lethal yellowing disease can spread rapidly under favorable conditions, and delays in implementation can significantly increase the scale and the cost of this response. Our current strategy is therefore focused on decisive early action to maximize the likelihood of successful eradication. The ministry remains committed to protecting the national coconut industry, safeguarding farmers' livelihoods, and preserving the ecological and economic value of our coconut production in Dominica. We continue to encourage the full cooperation of farmers, traders, residents, and the general public in reporting of suspicious or suspected cases, adherence to the movement restrictions, and support for our field operations as all essential. They are all essential to the success of this national effort. So in closing, I wish to thank all partners, agencies, farmers, staff field, and teamsmen, the community of the Northeast, and members of the public. Through coordinated action and sustained effort, we are working to contain and eliminate this threat. Thank you.
Well, thanks to Mr. Stevenson for providing so much additional context so that we really understand the extent of this threat and the necessity of a national response. Thank you so much, Mr. Stevenson. As you heard from him, they've taken very decisive actions, up to 700 trees already removed. So that speaks to the effort that has been underway in the past 2 weeks. So at this point, we would like to welcome the Honorable Minister for Agriculture, Roland Royer, to address us.
Thank you, Mrs. Gerald Smith. Let me acknowledge my colleague before, our PS, Anselm, our rep from ICA, Dexia, senior staff of the Ministry of Agriculture, the CEO of Dominican National Conservation Trust Fund, Dr. Ron Linton, and the media. Good morning. Today, I address the nation on a matter of significant importance to our agricultural sector and rural livelihoods. The Ministry of Agriculture, Fisheries, Blue and Green Economy has confirmed the presence of lethal yellowing disease affecting coconut and other palm species within the Woodford area in the Northeast agricultural region. Lethal yellowing disease is one of the most destructive diseases of coconut palms globally. Its presence in Dominica represents a serious phytosanitary threat, particularly given the importance of coconut production to our farmers, our rural economy, and our national food security. The coconut industry is a strategic pillar of agricultural development in Dominica. In recent years, government policy has sought to rebalance and modernize the industry, prioritizing 70% towards grade coconuts for fresh domestic and tourism markets, and 30% production toward dry nuts to support agro-processing and value-added industries. In alignment with the agricultural policy, the government of the Commonwealth of Dominica has implemented a comprehensive package of targeted investment and interventions to modernize, expand, and safeguard the coconut subsector. These initiatives focus on productivity enhancement, climate resilience, value addition, and plant health protection, recognizing the strategic importance of coconut to food security, rural livelihoods, and economic diversification. Key actions include the distribution of improved high-yielding and early-bearing planting material, promotion of jelly coconut varieties aligned with national consumption targets, strengthening of nursery certification system, and support to farmers through subsidized access to quality seedlings. Complementing this, the government has prioritized the rehabilitation of abandoned and underutilized estates, particularly in coastal and lowland zones, while promoting youth and women participation, thereby increasing productive acreage, revitalizing rural economies, and creating employment opportunities. To date, the industry supports over 800 farmers, provides employment across the value chain for 1,200 direct and indirect jobs, contributes to agro-processing and export potential, and plays an important role in coastal protection and climate resilience. The impact of this disease is left unmanaged could be far-reaching. However, I want to assure the public and all stakeholders that the government of Dominica is taking decisive, science-based action to contain and eliminate the threat. Immediately following confirmation of the disease, the ministry activated a national response plan focused on eradication and containment. This includes the removal and destruction of infected coconut and other palm species, intensified surveillance, vector management, and strict phytosanitary controls within affected areas. We are not undertaking this effort alone. The ministry is working closely with national, regional, and international partners, including the FAO, ICA, CARDI, BNCTF, the University of Florida, CPHD, CIRAD, and other agencies across the Caribbean region to ensure that our response is aligned with international best practices and supported by latest scientific expertise. Based on the current situation, the government is implementing several key policy measures. First, we have established designated epidemiological zones, including an infected core area and a surrounding buffer zone. Within this area, containment measures are being strictly enforced, including the systematic removal of infected palms and enhanced surveillance to detect and respond to new cases quickly. Second, we are implementing movement restrictions on coconut and palm planting materials within and from affected areas. This is a critical step to prevent the spread of the disease to other parts of the island. We are calling on all farmers, vendors, traders, homeowners, and members of the public to comply fully with these restrictions. Third, the government recognizes the impact on farmers and livelihood. We are actively developing and implementing support measures, including a compensation framework for affected farmers, as well as plans for rehabilitation and replanting using more resilient and suitable varieties. We will also continue to strengthen farmer engagement and public awareness, as community cooperation is essential to the success of this response. Early reporting of suspected cases Adherence to guidelines and support for field operation will significantly improve our ability to contain the disease. Let me be clear. This is a serious situation, but it is manageable if we act decisively and collectively. The window for effective intervention is limited, and the actions we take now will determine the long-term outcome for our coconut industry. The government remains fully committed to protecting the agricultural sector, safeguarding farmer livelihoods, and preserving the integrity of our natural and economic resources. I take this opportunity to thank our technical teams, partner agencies, and the communities in the affected areas for the cooperation and support thus far. We will continue to provide regular updates as this situation evolves. I urge all citizens to remain vigilant, cooperate with the ministry's directives, and support this national effort. Together, we will contain and overcome this challenge. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Honorable Minister, especially for your comments from a policy perspective. I'm sure the farmers who are listening and the general public are happy to hear that government does plan to develop support mechanisms and a framework for compensation. Everybody likes those words. At least that's under consideration, right, Minister? Right. So we thank you for those assurances and, of course, for the assurance that government remains committed to the agriculture sector and specifically the coconut subsector, part of the 5Cs program that the ministry speaks of so very often. So at this point, I would like to welcome questions from the members of the media who are present with us. As you heard from all three speakers, this is a very serious situation. We will continue public awareness, but there's an urgency that the members of the public, especially in the Woodford Hill area, appreciate the seriousness of what we're dealing with and the management approaches. Any questions? I see Cairo FM, I see EMU News. This is a bit unusual, but I would like to ask a follow-up question. I heard everything the three of you said, that we have taken decisive action, that this is manageable. But I want you to speak to us about your level of optimism as to whether we can, in fact, reverse and address the situation if the necessary measures are taken. So if you could just talk about that a little bit more.
As was mentioned, we are taking decisive action. We have not waited too long for the disease to spread too far before action is being taken. We have designated the zone and we are starting from out in to contain it and eradicate it where it is. So we are positive. We are sure that we will do our best to eradicate it within the present red zone that it's at.
And of course, part of that success will depend on the public cooperation that we've asked for. I see a question from the back.
It's incidents of commercial vehicle signatures. It says that I will be on the various projects. Obviously, I'm not
Right, excellent question. And this is why we're seeking the cooperation of the entire public. The reason for this press conference today, so that the entire community and the nationwide public can be aware of the situation, because it is a community effort in terms of the control and the eradication and the management of the spread. As mentioned earlier, it can be spread by the leafhopper vector, which is a very tiny insect. We can easily hitchhike onto clothing, transportation, and hence why we're not just reaching out to the farmers and the vendors. Yes, the farmers and the vendors, because they're the ones directly involved in the thing, but also the general public that may be in the area, as you did mention, the truck drivers, just the general community, so that they can be really vigilant as to what they do. One of the precautionary measures that we have put in place within the red zone, especially the epicenter where we mentioned Woodford. So we have already asked the public to prevent access or the public gathering on the Woodford Hill beach, because we know that it may be a place of community gathering, bathing, entertainment, but this is the epicenter of the disease. So even publications like that, person staying away from the beach, if you notice signs and symptoms, reporting it, just being vigilant. So this is really how we can contain this for a community effort. Well, okay. So we also talk about, well, not just foot baths but really the cleaning of your clothing, because foot baths and so may be if you had a soil-borne disease, but we have a vector and an insect being spread. So in addition to the foot baths, we also want the protection of your clothing. Ways we can do that is by having your sprays, or how we protect ourselves as working in the field is having rubbing alcohol, 70% to 90% rubbing alcohol, and have it as a spray. So once in the area and moving through, we can dispense it and clean ourselves, disinfect ourselves. So the general public and persons working within the area could also take those precautions. Also, while we're reaching out to the police and even the general public to just be have some surveillance within these areas and monitor the actions and the activities of the general public. Thank you.
Different word.
Symptoms that normal citizens can see, that they can recognize and report earlier symptoms, and what are the long-term, what are the long-term things that we are doing to prevent it, to avoid a reoccurrence of this disease?
So, as was mentioned, the earliest symptom you would find is the nut drop, the immature nut drop. So that is unusual. I mean, if you have a healthy coconut tree, your nuts don't just suddenly drop, regardless of the size or age of the nuts. So this is the first symptom you would see. It's just abnormal. The nuts fall, and then you would find the blackening of the area around where the calyx was. So, as a ministry, we said we are going to up surveillance activities around the red zone and actually island-wide to ensure that if any pop-ups happen of the vector or the disease, it can quickly be managed in order to prevent spread on island. We are installing billboards. Soon they'll be seeing billboards at both ends of the village, warning persons, please help us, because it has to be a community effort. Do not move any plant parts, do not move soil, do not move grass, do not move plant debris. Help us maintain, contain, and eradicate the disease in Woodford Hill.
Thank you. I just want to emphasize the importance of the community participation. I mean, the ministry can do so much. We have sought support from international agencies. Our ministry team is doing an excellent job, very proactive. As reported earlier, we've already fallen over 700 trees, so that shows the level of work that's happening in the area. But if we do not get the cooperation from the general public in not moving planting materials from the red zone out, it will defeat the purpose of the exercise. So we are basically pleading to the public to adhere to the measures that the ministry is enforcing, and let's cooperate with us so that we can have this thing eradicated. That is our goal, to have it eradicated. The coconut industry is very important to us. A lot of persons make their livelihoods from coconuts. It's one of our priority crops on our 5-6 program, and we'll do everything to ensure that we can contain and eradicate the disease to make sure our industry is safeguarded. But I just want to add how challenging the sector is to manage and to grow. So many times we hear comments from the public that nothing is happening in agriculture, they not see nothing going on. But we are making so much investment in the sector, in many subsectors, but we are challenged very often by these pests and disease. So we now have the yellow, leafal yellowing disease, but we also battle with Eustasia in citrus, green disease in citrus. We have to invest $7.9 million in a facility for citrus just to grow clean planting material. So that takes investment. We have Black Secatoka in banana and plantain that ravage the industry. Very difficult to manage. It takes a lot of effort and resources to bring Black Secatoka under a proper management threshold. So I'm just saying all this to say, it's not back on the surface, but at the ministry level, it's very, very difficult to really run the sector. And the government has, every time, has come up and face up and put the resources behind the ministry to help contain that. So we'll continue to invest, not just in coconuts, but in other subsectors. We value our processors that really do added value with coconuts. There are persons who are living off that. Our vendors who do jelly nuts, we'll see them around Roseau, different locations in Dominica. They live on coconuts. So that's why we take this so very seriously. And I'm pleading again to the public to help us so we can help the many persons that are really depending on the coconut industry to make a living.
Well, I have two questions. So based on reports, Jamaica reported 70% and Florida reported 90% of their different palm species got destroyed. I know that you also mentioned that 700 plants have already been destroyed, but you have like a certain percentage in the red zone and the orange zones that have been destroyed. And you also mentioned the second question that you will burn and also dump the coconuts. So have you identified any sites?
Yes, sir.
So these are the two questions.
Respond. Yeah.
Well, presently, the red zone is an area of about 700 acres. It's not completely with coconuts. And the orange zone encompasses about 1,800 acres of land space. Within that, we have about, the Northeast is one of the epicenters of coconut cultivation as well. So out of our 500 farmers and 1,800 acres of coconut, you have within that area. So the 700 trees is just a drop presently. We're just started our activities. We're still in terms of the outskirts working ourselves in. So it's really the beginning of the process. As you mentioned in our presentation, it may take about a 3 month to 4 months period, and we're just within the first week. So these 700 trees is just really a drop in the bucket as to where we have to go. But we are positive, as mentioned by our plant protection unit. We are positive in terms of the containment and the eradication. From our meetings last night at Woodford Hill, I think we got some good support from the community, which is good. They understand the urgency and the importance of the containment of this disease within the community before it spreads further, because they all recognize the importance to their livelihood, and the early eradication is the quicker we can bounce back in terms of resilience and get back to where we need to be. Hence why we need the support of everyone, and even our international and local agencies in this collaborative effort in making this successful.
I hope I answered your question. Yes.
Have you identified any sites for the dumping of the bird?
Okay, so in terms of the dumping and the burning, well, we wouldn't want to say dumping, but we promote the cutting, the bucking, the piling on site, then spraying with an insecticide to prevent the leafhopper from even continued sucking and spreading of the disease even after the cutback. And we promote the burning on site where possible. So we will try not to transport or carry the materials to other spots for dumping or whatnot. Where it cannot be burnt in terms of community and whatnot, we promote the burial of this material. So we really do not want to transport any material out of the red zone to anywhere else. Any movements, if necessary, will be done within that localized area. Also, the reason for we're starting on the outskirts of the red zone and working ourselves into the epicenter so that we can start from the cleaner areas and move into the more infected areas so that we will not, whilst doing this mission, we will not be encouraging the vector to spread out into the cleaner areas, and also the equipment and the tools that the groundsmen are using would be moving from the clean areas into the infected areas and not the other way around. So using those scientific methods, which has been recommended to us from all our partners, we should have some level of management. Thank you. We also have the presence, thank you, Dr. Kazimi, the presence, and we forgot to mention that throughout the presentation, which is critical. We also have our drone teams doing some aerial surveillance so that they can map out the areas properly. We want to restrict the movement of persons in the fields itself because we don't want the leafhoppers getting onto them and they being agents of spread. So having our drone teams working along with Lands and Survey as well, we're doing some aerial mapping so we can get a definite area and a more defined area of where we're working, and also a more precise count of the trees, the coconut trees within that area, because you will realize that you may have trees on farmer holdings and also trees in abandoned areas where covered with secondary forests or so. So with this aerial surveillance with our drones, we can get that proper and precise count, not just in areas, but in terms of number of trees. With our Lands and Surveys, we can identify the holdings of the farmers, and hence we're doing one-on-one personal visits to those persons, and I'm notifying them. Yeah, so also further with the drone team, we're working with the FAO that we can even do some surveillance and further surveillance where we can identify the trees that are infected with the leafal yellowing disease for more precise control and eradication. We also have, with the help of ICA, where we have our further drone where we can do aerial spraying for pests and disease for the insect control, because we know the coconut trees sometimes have the canopy and so when we talk about the control of the leafhoppers and so, we can also do continual aerial spraying and containment. We also have reached out to our international partners for further advice and recommendations and support in terms of this. Yes, and be the, so we're working on this. Thank you.
You mentioned that person from the community could reach out. Is there a number that closely to call, number one? And the second question that I have is with regards to the farmers, when they have identified that their coconuts are infected with the leafal yellow disease, is it that they can take actions on their own, or is there a protocol in place that they must call you first before they take any actions, or can they do it by themselves?
Okay, excellent questions. First, you can contact our offices at 266-4828, 266-4807, 266-3994. Right? So I can repeat this again. 266 4828, 266 4807, or 266 4994. You can speak to your extension officers or to anyone, and please leave your name, address, and area of thing. So far, we even have officers or farmers that report to us. Even farmers have come out and indicated that within these areas that they have moved plants to other areas so that we can trace and follow and do surveillance to help in the surveillance. And that's why we encourage the farming population or even communities wherever they know or they suspect areas of possible infection or contamination that they reported to us. As mentioned, it takes about 3 to 7 months to see the physical signs and symptoms of the disease. However, that's why we're seeking further support to enhance our surveillance through testing and diagnose and laboratory diagnostics, that so even plants that are not showing yet signs and symptoms, that we can have that early detection and control. So this is where one of the areas where surveillance, continued surveillance and monitoring within the orange zone and even nationally becomes very, very important, and where we need that type of support from our international partners and community, that we can get the capacity to do those things locally in our local labs, because having to send these tests to the University of Florida through we're grateful to them in partnering with us, but in terms of the time and the expense, in terms of the surveillance, if we can build this capacity locally, it will really enhance this. I hope I answered your question.
People from the city.
Okay. Okay, we encourage that they call us so that we can allow them to follow the proper protocol in eradication and detection. If it's a backyard situation and if you do want to, within the red zone, if you are cutting back, we do some control burning and but we still advise that to reach out to us, that we can follow the proper protocol in terms of eradication. Yes, thank you.
Right.
So yes, so in terms of building capacity, we met with the FAO one-on-one, myself and the director, I think 2 weeks ago, Ken? Yeah. And they've since approved a technical package for us, where they will provide us with a pathologist, an entomologist, and an integrated crop management expert to assist us in the management of that. And they're also going to build our capacity at our local molecular lab to supply us with reagent so we can do the testing locally. So our partners are already reaching out to us in terms of building capacity, also to help us to even print and produce more public awareness material so we can have this thing under control. So I want to say thank you to the FAO, ICA, and everybody who have been supporting us so far. And because we cannot overstate or stress, this is a very, very serious disease. More so, the number of persons, livelihoods who depend on the coconut industry. And we'll say again, the cooperation of the public is a must. Because if we don't get the cooperation, all the efforts that we're making to eradicate will be useless. So thank you so much for the time, and I pass back to you, Ms. Dura. Okay.
I just want to emphasize that it takes us to spread the disease, because the disease needs a host to survive. It cannot survive outside of a plant or outside of the vector. So that's why it requires us to move the disease either to planting material or to having the vector hitchhike on something on our clothes or so. So that's where the community, all of us, has to lend a hand. And we emphasize again, do not move out of these red or orange zones, any planting material, be mindful of, if you pass in an area that may have coconut trees or palm trees, ensure you don't have the vector on you. Do not move soil or grasses from these affected zones so that together we can keep and eradicate that disease where it is. Thank you.
Great, Joe. Oh, sorry.
A very pertinent question, because it has been raised. Persons who drink coconut water, they want to know if the plant is infected, if they're early sign, late sign, if the water is still safe.
An infected tree may remember the first sign is that it drops out of nuts, so sometimes you may not even get a nut to drink from it. But if the tree is still alive and healthy, you can drink the nuts. It causes no harm to you as a human. But no, the plant, we do not move the plant. Once that plant has germinated, it is then a risk of moving that disease because the leafhopper could have time infected before it moves.
Thank you.
All right. Thank you so much, Mrs. Ferrara. Mr. Kian Stevenson, the Acting Director of Agriculture. Mrs. Ferrara, Linessa Ferrara, is head of the Plant Protection and Quarantine Unit. And of course, we heard from the Honorable Minister. I think the message is clear. This is a serious disease, but the ministry has moved swiftly to manage it, and they are, to a large extent, depending on the cooperation of the public to continue with that effective management. Petra wanted to also inform our viewers and our listeners, those in the Northeast, that you can also contact your Farmer Service Center in Londonderry. Your extension officers are Adina James, Egbert Nelson, Colburn Toulon, and Braun Phillip. So these are the people you can reach out to in the immediate Northeast area. And of course, just to reiterate those numbers, 266-3828, 266-3807, 266-3994. Thank you so much to our presenters, to those of you who tuned in and stayed with us. Thank you, and please help us to spread the message. We will continue with our public awareness. So stay tuned. Of course, we will update you on our success rate as we go along. Thank you, everyone, for tuning in. Good morning.
Yes, the person was. We very good. Why is the